Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us in the world. I can see loads of people are streaming into the room, so I'm just going to give it just a few more minutes to make sure everyone's set up, ready to go, got their drinks in hand, and are ready for the next half an hour, 45 minutes or so for our webinar. Just a little bit of housekeeping, I suppose, whilst we're waiting for people to get comfortable. Yes, you will get a copy of the webinar afterwards. There will be this webinar also be available on demand on the HYCU website afterwards. So if you or your colleagues, don't get the email for whatever reason, or they didn't sign up, then there'll be an on-demand version available shortly after the webinar's finished. Feel free to ask any questions or in the Q&A or the chat boxes available, and I'll make sure we have time either as we go through or at the end to answer any of those. Please answer please ask any questions you do have. It makes my life a lot easier. So we have some interaction from our listeners and our viewers. So with that, I don't want to be conscious of everyone's time. So I can see that most people have hit the room now. Yeah, still a few more trickling in. But let's get started. So my name is Chris Rogers. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at HYCU. And today we're going to be talking about HYCU and a Nutanix unified storage and how that is, essentially giving you that instant resilience and hopefully incredibly simply as well. For the rest of the webinar, I'm going to probably, instead of say Nutanix unified storage every time, I'm probably going to say NUS. So if you hear me say NUS, that's what it stands for in Nutanix unified storage. So just so you're aware, because I'll probably get bored of saying Nutanix unified storage so many times. So a little bit about HYCU if you don't know who we are. So we have over 4,800 customers all around the world in over 78 countries, and over 440 channel partners who currently resell and use us to protect their own customers as well. So not small by any means. We're very established in the marketplace and obviously a global company. And you can see some of the investments and investors we have at the bottom there. I won't go through them all. And then if you don't know anything about us, what do we actually do? Well, we are the #1 data protection platform for Nutanix workloads in the marketplace. So we have multiple validated designs and blueprints from Nutanix. So you can go onto Nutanix website, see blueprints, exactly how to deploy and configure HYCU for Nutanix, and they've been verified by Nutanix themselves. We have military grade security, so built into our platform, essentially making it one of the most secure platforms for data protection on the planet as well. We are going to go into that a little bit more detail in some slides later on. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see now is all the workloads. Well, a subset of the workloads we support for Nutanix. We have, again, some slides later on some of the more workloads we do cover, but you can see pretty comprehensive across the board. No matter what you're trying to do with Nutanix, HYCU is going to have your base covered for backup. And the one I've left till last is our NPS score, something we're incredibly proud of. And I know that Nutanix are incredibly proud of their NPS score as well. If you're not familiar with NPS, it's a net promoter score. Essentially, it's a ranking of how happy your customers are. Typically, to get into the 90s is incredibly difficult. We're in 91. And I think it might have actually ticked over a little bit higher in the last few weeks as well. But that aligns directly with what Nutanix do as well. And it shows that our customers see value in what we give them, are happy with what they've purchased, the support they get, the after-sales care, etc., but also that their business outcomes are being met consistently with the products and services they've purchased from HYCU. And then if we dive into a little bit of history, so as I said, we're purpose-built for the Nutanix platform. And we were really the pioneers of Nutanix data protection. We were there before anybody else was. Wherever else was focusing on VMware and that overcrowded marketplace, we saw an opportunity to go after Nutanix. So that's where we started. So we were first to protect AHV with rapid restores, RoboSites. We were then first for files, so SMB and NFS, with VMware on top of Nutanix as well. We were first to do volume groups, buckets, multi-cloud from Nutanix. We were then first to do object lock on Nutanix objects and secure boot for virtual machines. We were then first to do HV Metro, snapshot-only backups, direct to archive. You can see the story here. We've been consistently first to market for every single iteration of what Nutanix has brought to marketplace. And that is going to carry on as well. That isn't something that's going to stop. We're always directly aligned to Nutanix's roadmap. So wherever Nutanix goes in the future and wherever you go with Nutanix, your data will be secure with HYCU. We are essentially going to, mirror them, and wherever they go, we're going to make sure the data on that platform is secure and backed up and as resilient as possible. And the last one there, the first to do Nutanix database as well, which is a really exciting workload that we did a webinar on a few months ago now. Really, really well attended. So if you would like to know about what HYCU and Nutanix can do for your database workloads, go check that one out as well. So as I said, roadmap is directly aligned with Nutanix. We worked, in tandem with Nutanix to go, okay, what's coming? What's next? How do we integrate? How do we make sure that we give our customers the best possible experience and make sure no data on the Nutanix platform goes unprotected? As I mentioned before, we have those validated designs and blueprints. We have a committed joint roadmap with Nutanix to make sure that we are number one and we stay number one. And it also helps then future-proof your investment, not just in the Nutanix platform and not just in HYCU, but jointly. So you can say and feel confident that if you're purchasing Nutanix, maybe it was for one use case, maybe it was just for virtual machines, and now you're going to spread out into files, and now you're going to spread out into NC2, and then database workloads, and maybe even AI workloads in the future, or whatever else where you may be going. You know that the joint combination of Nutanix and HYCU is going to have your back every step of that way. So you're not just going to be left in the lurch because the market shifted again, and actually VMware's become more popular, and so maybe other companies have pivoted back out to look at VMware again. We've been here from the start with Nutanix, and we intend to be there right through their journey as well. And then so we talked about the past. Now let's talk about the present and the future. So we have the widest coverage, we have the deepest integration, and we are the ultimate Nutanix data protection solution. And you can see on the screen here all the different areas of data protection that we cover within the Nutanix world or the Nutanix ecosystem. So all the way from AHV through to files, through to objects, through to volume groups, through to your metro clusters, robo clusters, you name it. If it lands on the Nutanix platform, we can pretty much back it up and do it in the proper way without any agents or kind of weird scripts or anything else like that. And you'll see again a bit more in detail in some later slides. And let's just look into some of the customers that HYCU do have. So you can see some great names on here: American Express, Bain Capital, Meditech, Equinox. I've purposely left out the middle one because I think this is the most important from everyone who's listening, and from my point of view as well, is it's actually Nutanix themselves. So Nutanix IT actually use HYCU to back up their own workloads, and guess what? They're running on Nutanix. And I always say to customers, prospects, partners, everyone in the industry, if there was a better, more integrated, better aligned data protection company for Nutanix, then I think Nutanix would probably switch to them. But they have been a happy customer for HYCU for many, many, many years now. This isn't a freebie they get from us. They're a happy paying customer of HYCU, and they use that for their mission critical workloads and other workloads for us as well. So you can bet your bottom dollar if you trust your workloads with Nutanix to run your platform and run your data. They trust us. They trust us to protect the data that's running on their platforms as well. So typically, if we look at previous or what's happened in the marketplace, most Nutanix data protection on the marketplace has been retrofitted. Whereas we came from that being our roots and designing it purpose-built for Nutanix, most other data protection vendors came from a different background, whether it was from VMware or from Windows or from Unix, wherever it was. They've come from a different background and have then retrofitted Nutanix to fit their legacy platform. So they weren't built for Nutanix. Quite often they're particularly slow to deploy, slow to scale, or hard to recover. And they become complex and resource intensive to manage. And a quick example of this, if you take this as your infrastructure, your data center, right? So we've got Nutanix, we're running AHV on top of it. We might be running NAS as well. And we've got some workloads running on top of there, some VMs, right? And typically when we look at legacy platforms, to protect these workloads, we're going to have to deploy backup servers. And then we're going to have to deploy proxy servers, maybe even 2 or 3 proxy servers. And then we're going to have to deploy a reporting server. And then we're going to have to deploy a mount server to be able to mount backups to. And then we're going to have to deploy a central backup manager to control all these pings. And then we're going to have to deploy a cloud gateway to be able to send data to the cloud. And then on all of these virtual machines, we're then going to have to deploy agents onto them. Okay, it might not be every single one, but for a lot of use cases, we're going to have to then deploy agents and manage those agents as well. And what does that give us? It gives us a really highly complex design, really hard to deploy, and extremely hard to manage. You think of how many times you're going to have to upgrade each single one of these components. Even if it's a one-click upgrade, you've got then 15 different places to do that one-click upgrade. And then you've got all the interoperability between all those components, the agents on which OSs they can run, all those types of things as well. So it becomes incredibly difficult to manage. It becomes essentially a full-time job just to keep on top of patching and maintenance for backup platforms. Not only that, it then takes away the resources from production VMs. You can see here, we've had to delete like 5 or 6 VMs from our production here because guess what? Those backups and those backup platforms need resources to run. And every single agent inside of those VMs also need resources to run inside that VM as well. So we're taking away valuable production resources that we paid to run our production systems for backups. And they're particularly challenging to scale and size. If we need to then scale, which thing do we scale? Do we have to scale the mount server because the restores are slow? Do we have to scale the proxy servers? Do we need more proxy servers? Do we need bigger ones? Do we need more reporting? You can see how it becomes incredibly difficult to understand which piece is the bottleneck and which piece you need to upscale. Do you need more? Do you need less? And then you have multiple UIs. These aren't all uniform. They're going to be in different windows, look completely different, and therefore we're going to be in different places just to protect potentially one single virtual machine. And unfortunately, this does then increase your cyber risk and have performance issues. This has a huge attack surface. And again, we're going to go into that in a little more detail later on once we go through this. But I just want to give you the HYCU way now. So purpose-built data protection for your Nutanix estate. I know we're doing a NUS, but I want to give you the preamble first, so everyone understands how HYCU does things a bit differently in the marketplace. So modern data protection, purpose-built for Nutanix. So what happens here? So essentially, this is what we deployed a minute ago from our legacy infrastructure. So we essentially can take all of those agents away. As I mentioned before, HYCU is completely agentless. No agents at all, none to worry about. We can take all of those components, suck them into a single virtual hardened appliance, put all your VMs back, and guess what? We just take up one. We just need one virtual machine to run in your estate, and that does all of those components in one. No proxies, no gateways, no agents to deploy. One single hardened virtual appliance which runs on Linux. You download it from HYCU, you install it like any other template you would from in Nutanix, and you're off and running and away you go. Very simple, very easy to use. And essentially, what does that give us? Well, it gives us a lower TCO. We consume less resources, less time, less people, all of these things. We're faster to deploy, faster to discover, faster to protect, faster to manage. Everything in the ecosystem here is designed for speed. We're completely lightweight. No agents, no proxies, no impact. We get that instant protection without having to worry about what's going to happen to your environment once you install all these components. And unlimited scale. Easy to scale to any size without effort. You can either scale that one appliance up, or you can add multiple appliances for different environments if you wanted to. It's a bit like worker nodes. And if you get to a point where you're scaling back down, well, you just remove them. Take them out, take them out, take them out. It's very simple. Done automatically if need be as well. And then we look at what use cases we can use HYCU R Cloud for. So first one is application discovery. We can give you visibility into what's actually running inside your virtual machines, and then tailor the protection depending on what we find. For instance, a SQL virtual machine is going to need to be protected different from an Exchange virtual machine, which is going to need to be protected differently to an Oracle virtual machine, for instance. So we give you visibility. And again, all of that is agentless. So we don't have any agents running in the VMs, but we still give you visibility. We can discover what applications are running inside your VMs on Nutanix. We also give you backup and recovery, the core capability. We can give you disaster recovery, cyber resilience, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail later on. Mobility and migrations. So if you wanted to move to cloud, you want to run a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, you can do that with HYCU. If you're moving from an alternative hypervisor into Nutanix and AHV, we can help you recover those workloads from VMware, for instance, or Hyper-V or Azure Stack HCI, or Azure Local as it's now called, into AHV, but also vice versa as well. So you're not locked into any platform. We give you long-term retention or archive. We give you security and compliance with our reporting and RTO assurance, and data protection at the edge. So if you're running robo-sites with Nutanix, again, we did a webinar just on robo-sites relatively recently. So if you do have remote offices or edge sites, take a look at the webinar we did maybe 2 months ago, something like that. On that, because we did a whole one just about that. And if you are familiar with Nutanix and their Prism UI, you can see right in the middle of my screen is HYCU's UI. It looks remarkably similar. We've designed that on purpose so it feels like a Nutanix product. It feels like something that you're familiar with. You don't have a huge learning curve. You don't have to become and sit a 5-day course to learn how to use HYCU. It's very intuitive, very easy to use, and intelligently simple as well. So now we kind of understand the basics of what HYCU and our cloud can do for Nutanix and how it does differentiate itself in the marketplace. Let's look at what we do with Nutanix Unified Storage, or NUS. So you can see here, I'm going to go through 5 overview points, and then we're going to dive into some of them a little bit deeper. So HYCU and NUS overview. So we're purpose and co-built. So if you're using Nutanix files or Nutanix objects, for instance, well, if you're using Nutanix files, HYCU and Nutanix actually co-built the API for their change file tracking API. So we helped each other develop the API to make our systems easier to run, faster, more efficient. That's how integrated HYCU is with Nutanix. And then even at the development level, where they ask us for help, we ask them for help, and we'd help design actual things that go into the product. And we use that API to make sure we track the changes inside of your Nutanix files environments to make sure it's the most efficient way of backing up those files possible. We're efficient and simple. So we have a zero architecture design with a small footprint, no agents, as I mentioned before, no proxies, and more importantly, no additional hardware. If you're running Nutanix Unified Storage already, we can simply drop straight on top of that. So you don't have to buy any other storage. We can then back up from your AHV environment and put that straight into your Nutanix objects. If you wanted to, we can take it from your Nutanix files, put it into Nutanix objects. We can take it from Nutanix objects, put it on files. You can see we've got a two-way street here. We can back up NUS, but then we can also store backups on NUS as well. So it's kind of like that two-way parallelism. We can store and protect that data as well. We can help maximize investment and lower TCO. It's a single familiar platform for securing your whole hybrid multi-cloud environment with maximum storage efficiency on top of that as well. And then we've got built-in cyber resilience. And we're going to discuss that in a little more detail because unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, whenever we do a webinar, whenever I do customer meetings or partner meetings or prospects or any type of press, conversation always comes back to ransomware and malware and how are we helping with those modern threats. So we're going to dive into that a little bit later on with some newer updates we've released recently and kind of understanding how that works with NUS. And also how to protect the modern data estate. So we're talking about Nutanix and NUS, but actually I'd imagine most people on the call today haven't got every single piece of data they own inside a Nutanix environment. We're modern organizations. They're going to be running a hybrid multi-cloud. We're going to be having some public cloud services. We're likely to have many, many, many SaaS services, probably more than you actually think. It's probably people think that maybe it's going to be 10, 20. Actually, the average mid-market has more than 200 SaaS applications in their organization holding critical data. So how can we protect everything, from AI data all the way through to SaaS data and land it on Nutanix objects as well? So how do we lower TCO and maximize our investment? So you recognize this slide. This is our data center, right, with Nutanix and AHV or ESXi if you want to run that hypervisor on top of it. And what we had before is we deployed HYCU into this environment, right? And that's fine. We needed one VM as we discussed earlier. But actually, what a lot of organizations do now is have a separate Nutanix Unified Storage environment. It's in the same racks and everything else, but it's not running the virtual machines. It's licensed slightly differently, so it's licensed just to run that storage. And actually, you can actually run the HYCU controller or the thing that actually backs up your VMs actually on the unified storage platform itself. So you don't even have to take any resources away from your production VMs at all. And the beauty of this is if you're using this for production and for backup, for instance, we've got that little line in the middle of the NUS cluster there. We could have one for production data, and then we could have separate buckets away for backup data. But we've got an air gap away from our production virtual machines as well. So if we're backing up those production virtual machines, we haven't actually got data flowing into there, backing up there, and then moving across. There's a complete air gap. So the actual controller is sitting outside of that production environment as well. So I think that's a very important thing to do. And when I say maximize investment, this is what I mean. We don't have to actually deploy anything new. We don't have to have any new nodes or any new resources. You can just deploy within the existing licensing structure of Nutanix Unified Storage. You could deploy the HYCU controller on top of that platform and run it there. I think that's a really key point here. That's a huge cost savings. We don't have to buy any additional hardware. We don't have to buy any additional storage if we're running it already. And we can maximize the investment we've already spent. If we've already got Nutanix Unified Storage sat there, we can utilize that to protect our data on there with full immutability as well. And the next point I want to make is around protecting the modern data estate. And as I kind of mentioned a minute ago, we've got these 20 years ago, we would have these logos you can see on the screen here. So some of the old logos, some of them even I don't even remember, but SQL Server, Oracle, those typical workloads. And 10 years ago, we moved on into virtualization, or maybe even 20 years ago as virtualization as well. And we had IaaS and SaaS. There was a very small SaaS, I think Salesforce, and then along came Office 365 and database as a service and platform as a service came along with IaaS and VMware, etc. But in today's world, this is typically what most organizations are going to see. We're going to have some on-premise environments. We're probably going to have a bit in infrastructure as a service. We're probably definitely going to be using database or platform as a service. And we're definitely going to be using SaaS applications. A lot of organizations I know, it's a SaaS first. Buy from a SaaS service. If not, then we'll build it on-premise or we'll use a platform as a service offering as well. But essentially, they're going to be storing lots and lots of data in those SaaS services. And unfortunately, the legacy data protection focus has always been on the on-premises environments. If you look at the modern data estate, I think it's 60% of enterprise data is actually stored in the cloud. Well, that's in SaaS and public cloud data. But typically, we're not protecting that. Again, if you look at the vendors out there for SaaS data, they actually cover between them, I think around about 10 to 12 SaaS applications, the ones that are in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. HYCU alone have 85 different integrations across the modern data estate. So we are the #1 SaaS data protection organization in the world as well as being the #1 Nutanix data protection organization as well. And what do I mean by protecting the modern data estate? Well, this is really, really important. So we not only can protect the multi-cloud environment, so the Nutanix, the VMwares, the Google Clouds, your file servers, all those types of things. But then we start going into modern applications. So Google Compute Engine, BigQueries, those types of AI workloads as well. Maybe Amazon VPC, the AWS Lambda, those types of functions as well. And then we start moving into our SaaS applications. Obviously, the big ones like Office 365, Google Workspace, Salesforce, those big ones. But you'll see some names on there you probably haven't even thought about backing up. Things like GitLab, GitHub, where probably some of the most crucial data organizations own is their IP are stored in those platforms, yet they don't back it up. The same for Okta or Entra ID or even AWS IAM. The keys to your castle, the keys to your kingdom, and all the configuration are stored in that. But yet organizations don't back it up and don't protect it. The idea here is that we protect everything, but we protect it all the ways back down to a customer-controlled environment. So we never ever send it to a HYCU-owned cloud or a vendor-owned cloud. Customer data should live with the customer, and they should have sovereignty and control over that data at all times. So we're talking about Nutanix Unified Storage here. So all of this data can be now written back down onto on-premises systems. So I think that's a great way of starting to spread the word of actually, this is how you keep control of your data, especially data that you didn't think you needed to protect, or maybe you haven't thought of protecting before, especially in that middle and the last column here with the modern apps and SaaS applications. All of that can be protected back down onto your hybrid multi-cloud Nutanix Unified Storage platform. And now I want to dive into the cyber resilience. So we introduced a couple of weeks back HYCU R-Shield. So what is HYCU R-Shield? Well, HYCU R-Shield is a built-in cyber resilience fabric for our HYCU R-Cloud platform. And it kind of has 3 core pillars. So always protected, always observing, and always ready. There was a massive announcement on this last week or the week before, I think it was. So please go watch the webinar from that. I haven't got time to cover every single aspect of this today. It goes much deeper than what I'm going to cover today. But this is really poignant for the Nutanix Unified Storage story, because cyber resilience is a big piece of that. So again, if we look at another example of the legacy backup infrastructure here with the backup servers, the agents, the proxy servers, the gateways, etc. They're very easy to find on the network. They're very chatty. Everything has to talk to each other and has to have interoperability between each other. That means they're very easy to find, and it's very easy to track what's going where and what data is flowing between what. Therefore, it's very easy to find where the backup data is stored. There's also a high chance of CVEs, and that's not just hearsay. If you look at vendors in the marketplace, you'll find that they have CVEs in their environment, and that's not to say HYCU never has them. But the more components you have, the more pieces of software you run, the more pieces of the puzzle you have, the higher chance you have of running CVEs. And if they're all things that you need to patch yourselves, guess what? It's on you to patch those. So yes, they might patch them immediately, but then you've got to go through and trying to make sure you patch 5 proxy servers, 2 backup servers, all these agents, etc. Again, takes time, more room for mistakes that can happen. And if we look at then HYCU, look at the easy mutability. So we are always on. So we don't have to enable mutability. There's no risk of forgetting to set it or marking it as immutable. The mutability is always on. As long as the platform you're storing the data on is marked as immutable, then we'll store that in immutable format. And that gives us complete storage independence. So obviously we're talking about Nutanix Unified Storage here. Obviously you can store that in there. But in my example here, you can see I'm actually got a data domain with ddboost and object lock stored, or retention lock as well. So you can see here, we have a complete option. We can have a copy on Nutanix objects. We can have a copy on data domain. We can have a copy in the cloud if we want. We're not limited by what we have from a hardware point of view, giving customers multiple copies across multiple different platforms. And if you are looking for vaulting, cyber vault's becoming increasingly hot topic in cyber resilience. We're fully compatible with the number one thing cyber vault on the marketplace, which is the Dell Cyber Resilience Vault. And then we start looking at anomaly detection. So we can detect anomalies in virtual machines, in file shares, and also in as-a-service applications like Okta, for instance. So not only are we looking at VMware's, Nutanix AHV and ESXi, and looking at anomalies in that backup platform, we're looking at them in Nutanix Files, and also in those as-a-service applications as well, where, again, most other vendors on the marketplace are going to say, yeah, we do anomaly detection, but it's going to be VM only. Most of the time when we're talking about scanning or anomaly detection, we're talking VM only. And now I want to introduce you to our malware scanner. So fast, efficient ransomware scanning for Nutanix VMs and Nutanix Files. So the way that we actually do things, as we mentioned before, we have complete independence of the storage. So let's say we've got a Nutanix Unified Storage cluster. We're backing up AHV virtual machines to Nutanix objects and Nutanix Files to Nutanix objects as well. We've obviously got object locks set on those buckets, so we're immutable. What we're doing here is we're actually utilizing the Nutanix snapshot functionality to take the backups. So it's the most efficient way of taking backups. But what we do is we actually scan the backups on the production system. And with the Nutanix snapshot capability, it has no read penalty or write penalty. It's an incredibly clever piece of technology. I'm sure the Nutanix guys would be able to tell you a bit more about their capability better than I can. But essentially, what we do is we mount that to our HYCU RShield scanner, and we're using YARA rules. We can scan those workloads and look for malware. You can see here on my screen we've got a match, and then you log into the log files, have a look what data has been impacted or potentially is impacted with a match for malware, and you can take mitigating action from there. But the key piece here is data control. I mentioned this earlier as well. But again, with other platforms, even if it's metadata, they send it off to their own clouds to do their AI scanning, etc., or their YARA scanning, whatever else they do. With HYCU, we don't want it to look or touch any of your data. It stays within your environment, within your control. So it stays on top of the Nutanix environment you're running, and then gets copied off for a normal backup job into whatever storage you've decided. So Nutanix objects, for instance. And we're using that double protection, so that anomaly detection on top of the malware scanning. So we're giving you a dual layer of saying, okay, we think something's wrong. Actually, we found something that's wrong. So, giving that higher level degree of confidence. And again, that backup storage independence I mentioned, we can even support a direct to cloud offering. So if you're running Nutanix NC2 or you're running NAS in the cloud or whatever it might be, we can actually still do YARA scanning and send data directly to an object storage in the cloud. And we look at the flexible recovery. There's no point in backing up if we can't recover. Backup is only half the story. So if we look at the hybrid cloud, we have the fastest recovery in Nutanix. We can recover directly from the Nutanix snapshots we keep. And that means we're recovering from production system directly back into production system. So we don't have to worry about migrating data from a backup platform, rehydrating, or anything else like that, or even instant mounting and migrating. We essentially just recover directly back into where it came from on the same production grade storage and compute. We can do cross hypervisor recovery. So if you wanted to migrate workloads from AHV to VMware or VMware to AHV or any of the hypervisors we support, you can also do that. And we support clean room recovery in whatever aspect you want that to be. That could be a clean room in public cloud. That could be a Nutanix clean room that you've got offsite. That could be a VMware a VMware clean room that you've got left over or something like that. It can be a combination of any of that. But essentially, you can bring HYCU up completely independently. Doesn't need network connection, connected to backup data, and then away you go. Now, if we start looking at the other workloads, so the modern data estate, it actually varies slightly. So we go into cloud native. Again, we have that high speed directly from production recovery, directly back into those cloud native services. We can then do cross-regional recovery. So if we wanted to go from US East to US West, we can recover that data into a different region if you want. But also we can also do cross-cloud recovery. So if you want to recover data between public cloud environments, you can do that as well. And then move into the SaaS environments. And this becomes even trickier. Again, most vendors, you can do recovery back inside the application because typically when we talk about SaaS, we've got the application itself and then we have the data. And you need both to be able to work, right? You need both to read the data, you need the application. Great. What happens if your instance goes offline? Well, we can do cross-instance recovery. So if you had a sandbox environment or a standby environment, we can then restore that data back into the secondary environment. And the last piece of the puzzle is offline recovery. And on this, I'm going to actually use this slide here. So imagine we've got data stored in box.com, for instance. We're having logically separated backups that runs outside of the SaaS environments. We're protecting that back down onto Nutanix Unified Storage. In customer-owned backups, they have sole control of the backup and data they have retained. Again, we've mentioned this a few times, but I think it's super important to make sure that it is reiterated. And then what happens if we want to recover some data? Okay, we can put it straight back into Box and read it. Okay, perfect. But what happens if there's a supply chain attack? What happens if Box.com is down or Atlassian is down? What happens if those cloud environments aren't available, if they're not being able to restore data into, or if we can't even read our production data? But with HYCU, we can actually give that data from Nutanix objects, maybe put that into Nutanix files and give access that way. So we have offline recovery in readable formats. So that box data that you might have, it might be, I don't know, really important PowerPoint presentations, finance files, legal files, whatever it might be that you're storing in Box. Suddenly, if you don't have access to those, what are you going to do? Well, you have to wait for box.com to come up. Well, not with HYCU, not anymore. You can suddenly go into your backups and export them and give them in a readable, usable format to then be able to what you do. It's not going to be the same user interface as box.com, right? But it's going to give you access to that critical data when you need it without the reliance on a third party. So 3 key takeaways from me. So the first one is protect more with NUS. We can protect the entire Nutanix environment, so NDB, NC2, files, objects, volume groups, NKP, you name it, we can protect it in the Nutanix platform. But then also look beyond the Nutanix platform. Look at those cloud native services you have. Look at IaaS, DBaaS, PaaS, and more importantly, SaaS applications. Simplify and strengthen with HYCU and NUS. So we saw how easy it is to deploy HYCU, that one simple appliance, and how easy it is to strengthen that because we can have that air gap immediately by running on the Nutanix Unified Storage platform itself. And look at all the cybersecurity features we have on top of that as well. And the third piece is then maintain control. If it's in your environment, in your NUS environment, all that data you're pulling back in is in your control. You have the keys to that. You're not relying on anybody else. And I'll leave this up here for a few minutes just so you can read some of the customer quotes here that we've pulled out from our case studies and reviews we have, etc. I think one of the biggest ones for me is the bottom one. If a security breach ever occurs, I know HYCU will have our data replicated in several places with multiple ways to recover that data. And that kind of goes back to that table I showed you just a minute ago. No matter what the data is, we've got multiple different ways of recovering the data depending on what happens, depending if it's a supply chain attack, whether it's a malware attack on your environment, or whether it's just something simple like a deletion. No matter what happens, we've got ways that we can help you recover that data. So I'll leave this up just for a moment. I I think we have got some questions. I'll just look at them quickly whilst people are reading that. Will the slides get shared? Yes, of course the slides will get shared. Maybe John, you were just maybe a minute late after I said that, but yes, of course the slides will get shared, and there'll be a copy of the recording that goes out of the webinar as well. So whilst people are reading that, let's move to the next slide. So the next steps for people. So there's a solution brief you can download, and this is actually a Nutanix solution brief. So it's actually hosted on nutanix.com, and it's a joint one from Nutanix and HYCU. They actually published it and did it off their own back, which is great. There's a webinar for all the cybersecurity pieces that we discussed today. I know that's going to be of importance to a lot of people on the call, all the extra cyber resilience features that we launched with RShield. If you are a Nutanix admin, there's a checklist as well. There's a data sheet for Nutanix for cyber resilience as well, which we're putting, all those links are going to be put into the chat right now. And last but not least, if you are interested, sign up for a demo. We can get one of our guys to demo it for you. We can get one of the guys to give you access to a free trial, whatever you want, however you want to experience it. You can do that in your own environment or have a run through with one of our experts as well. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I will take a few questions from the audience now. So we've got what hypervisors do we support besides Nutanix? So we have obviously Nutanix AHV. We have ESXi, both on VMware platforms and on top of the Nutanix platform as well. We support Azure Local, and we will be very, very soon supporting Hyper-V as well. So those are the hypervisor platforms. But then we support all three public cloud environments, all the PaaS, DBaaS, etc. services, plus all those SaaS services you saw on the screen. You can have a look in the HYCU marketplace on HYCU.com and have a look at all of the applications and integrations we have with various different data sources. And then next one, can HYCU being used workload migrate have such capability like Commvault, Exerto, etc.? Yes, absolutely. Of course it can. Giving the ability to migrate between platforms is 100% a use case for us. We've got a lot of customers use us to migrate between VMware, AHV, public cloud, back down from public cloud. So it's essentially giving people options, and they do like having options in the platform to be able to actually, Nutanix is what I'm running right now, but actually I'd like to have a copy that I can spin up in AWS if I need to. Maybe that's my DR site. I don't want to run two sites. I want to run a site in AWS or Google or Azure, whatever it may be. You can do that. So yes, absolutely. Workload migration is a very, very popular use case for our customer base. Other notifications available to query via API, then sent to an observability solution such as Datadog or Grafana. Yes, so you can pull them via API, but you also have a webhook. So anything that integrates with a webhook, you can send the data out and the alerting out via webhook. So any SIEM or SOAR platforms that can ingest a webhook, you can ingest all of that data and all the alerting into that as well. So we have our setup on Slack just because we get everything through Slack. But if it was ServiceNow or Splunk, whatever else, it could be anything else like that, you can ingest that data that way. So can HYCU also replicate or form DR failure for containers? So it's only for the Nutanix Kubernetes platform at the moment, because essentially the way where we integrate under storage layer, so we can protect those containers. So we don't have anything for Tanzu and OpenShift like the question's been answered. What is the cost for HYCU R? Is it just an upgrade and can we see? I presume you mean RShield. So the actual cost of RShield, there's no additional cost. So if you're a HYCU R Cloud customer on the premium subscription, there's no additional cost for those features and functionality. So it's bundled into the price, and it's not a SKU you can buy. It's it's a fabric that's woven into the rest of our R Cloud platform. So it's part of the premium license. And that answered the last question. Is RShield a different HYCU license or just a single license? No different license for HYCU RShield. Just to reiterate, it is, as I mentioned, just a fabric that's weaved through the whole of the platform. And it'll be a design basis moving forward that everything that we do will have RShield woven through it. And it's part of the premium license edition. And most of our customers are running that already, especially if you're running Nutanix Files, because that's where you get the change file tracking and etc. All those types of bits and pieces as well. So yes. Any more questions? I'm going to wait just 1 minute to see if any more come in. I don't think there's any in the chat. Let me just check the chat and the questions. Perfect. So no more questions. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. You can reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn. So if you want to send me any feedback, good or bad, find me on LinkedIn, or send me an email, chris.rogers@hycu.com, or reach out to your account teams or partner teams. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.